how to promote Mars, showing the public the value of Mars exploration. Rich Phillips, of Phillips and Company, is the moderator. And for me, Rich is the man who sells Mars to any unsuspecting bystander or passerby. Rich is really very, very good at what he does. He proved that, I think, to all of us with the Get Curious campaign that he designed, and he and his team, of course, but I know a lot of it comes from Rich's own ingenious mind. Rich is going to introduce the rest of the panel, and I think we're going to learn something of how to entice the public to be interested in our Mars research. Rich.
Thank you very much, Artemis. I am so pleased to be here at the second annual Humans to Mars Summit, and this is such a critical topic, and I appreciate all of you that have come back. It is very hard to follow Buzz Aldrin. It is almost harder to follow lunch. So appreciate you all being here. This is a critical topic because outreach and communications with the United States public outside of Washington, D.C., and also the world is going to be necessary if we are going to be able to achieve some of our goals. And so we have a panel today that's going to help us understand the challenges and the opportunities for promoting Mars, marketing Mars, and deep space exploration, both robotic and human. And we're very pleased to have this conversation because, frankly, all of you in here today and those watching remotely are ambassadors and also are part of the solution for communications. So first I'm going to introduce just some bios of the folks that are up here, and then we'll have short presentations and then time for Q&A. To my far left is Emily Briere, and Emily is the acting mission director at Time Capsule for Mars. She is an undergraduate at Duke University, and I'm going to say that again. She is an undergraduate at Duke University because it's hard to believe of her long list of accomplishments already. But she is a mechanical engineering major, aerospace certificate, math minor. She's also a teaching assistant in electrical fundamentals of mechatronics. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. But she's also a mechanical engineer and chief marketing officer of a company called BioOrbit, where she co-invented modular bioreactor hardware to streamline advanced testing of biological samples on board the ISS. Impressive. And she's been an intern at Lockheed, a research associate and cadet at NASA Ames, and I guess her company's been named Company to Watch 3 years in a row. Is that BioOrbit? Yeah?
That was Marc's me.
Oh, that was the other one. And she's also received other numerous accolades, so we're happy to have Emily here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
In addition, we have Marc Kaufman, and Marc is a veteran. He has spent much of the past 2 years reporting, writing, editing a book about curiosity, MSL, and Mars for National Geographic, and he'll be talking about that a little bit today as well. The book is titled Mars Up Close, and it's an in-depth look at the drama, the science, the behind-the-scenes activity that was behind that mission, so it's going to be real exciting to read. And it's going to actually look forward, too, on what the Mars mission means for the future. But he's also been the author of other books as well, including First Contact, which was scientific breakthroughs in the hunt for life beyond Earth, and, of course, was a science reporter, writer, editor, national, I guess correspondent in terms of foreign correspondent as well, Washington Post, Philadelphia Inquirer, just to name a few. Thank you, Marc, for being here today. And to my left is Kristen Erickson, who I've had the privilege to work with. She is Assistant Director for Strategic Communications Integration at NASA in the Planetary Science Directorate. Since 2009, she has led the science engagement and outreach efforts, including Common Encounters, moon missions, both transit to Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, Saturn, of course our Mars missions. She was instrumental at helping us do all the outreach in terms of Curiosity and MSL, and she's also working on upcoming events, which includes the flyby of Pluto in 2015. She has led the agency's strategic communications efforts, helped implement new approaches to communications, has had numerous leadership positions in both human spaceflight as well as the Office of the National Administrator. And I'm from Austin, Texas, and she did go to Texas A&M, which is very cool. Oh, got some, there we go. And I also went to Boston University, didn't quite make Harvard, but she did graduate from Harvard as well. So thank you, Kristen, for being here. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily just to introduce a little bit about what she's doing and with the time capsule, but I know that we have the privilege of listening to her tomorrow, and so I think she's going to give it all away. But Emily, do you want to talk for a few minutes and just introduce yourself and what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you, Rich. So I'm one of the leaders of a space endeavor that we believe really could refocus the space race and remind ourselves why we're going to space in the first place. So the mission's called Time Capsule to Mars, and it aims to celebrate the whole idea of Spaceship Earth as we move forward into the era of colonizing another planet. So our international team is centered at MIT's Space Propulsion Lab, and we're working with technical and marketing teams from MIT to Stanford, UCSC, we have Duke, UConn, worldwide universities, all coming together to send the first student-led CubeSat to Mars, which is pretty exciting and novel right there. But we hope, in addition, to be the first private mission to Mars. And in addition, this will be the first interplanetary trial of ion electrospray propulsion. So this propulsion has the capacity to potentially get us to Mars in 4 months rather than 8 or 9, which could dramatically reduce transport time. So the time capsule itself will be digital media encoded with audio, video, photographic data of millions of people around the world who will send in their pictures and be encoded on our time capsule. And our technical teams are going to bring along on the ride K through 12 age kids, so they can upload their photos, track their progressions through the solar system, and even watch the time capsule land on Mars. And this is a kind of outreach that didn't really exist when I was young, so we're really trying to target this audience and bring them into the excitement of going to Mars. So we're really excited, and particularly we are excited today to announce our partnership with Explore Mars in becoming a formal project under their nonprofit organization. So we would like to thank Chris Carberry for all his hard work, and we are very excited to be joining them on this exciting endeavor.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate that. Marc?
It's most intriguing to come on after Buzz Aldrin was speaking and watching people line up to get a signature on a book. And I was thinking about why is that? And I think the main reason is the man has been on the moon. He has a presence. He has there's a personal connection there that people can relate to. Well, in my small way, that's what I've sought to do with this book about Mars and Curiosity. Because of this astounding imagery that's coming back from Curiosity and then also from the orbiting satellites and cameras, we can show Mars as we never have before and make it appealing, almost familiar in ways, and you could see areas that clearly had been cut out by rivers and probably other areas that were lakes. So in any case, that really is my goal in this book, is to put you as readers there, and readers and viewers. I had the very good fortune of working with National Geographic, obviously a very visual organization, but it's a full book as well. So I'm going to be presenting or describing the science, the scientists, the drama, the things that are working, things that sometimes almost result in the end of the mission, which did occur indeed. What I hope to do is to communicate the fascination, the wonder, just the sense of that this being something really, really special that I experienced while being in the middle of it. Just a little bit about myself so that you can see what I bring to this and how it might be a little bit different than Emily and others. I've been a science writer for 10 years or so, a little bit more. Before that, the last time I took science was in high school. So I've been a journalist for a really long time. I've been a science writer for a much shorter time. And what I try to do, work very hard to do often, is to understand what the people of science are telling me, and then ask them again and again until it kind of gets through to me, and then I can present it hopefully in a way that's scientifically rigorous and at the same time accessible. And that's what, again, I think and hope we have done. I did not set out to promote Mars per se. That isn't really the work of an author and a journalist. However, I would be absolutely delighted if that's what happened as a result of this. I mean, I came away from the experience feeling that the people involved were astounding, were unlike what people, what the general public imagines, and that the science and the engineering are, as good as it gets on Earth or in the world. So with that. And also, the book will be coming out just as Curiosity arrives at the base of Mount Sharp, which was initially going to be a fairly short time after arriving on Mars, but they changed that and went to Yellowknife Bay instead. So Kristen was one of the people who was extremely successful in making the landing as much of an international event. I'm going to do my little part, my smaller part, in trying to make the arrival at Mount Sharp an event as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marc. This has been a great collaboration. I'd like a show of hands for those of you in the audience who either watched the Curiosity landing online or at one of the events around the world. Who saw the landing? Oh, that's great. Well, let's see a little short video for the rest of the events. Wade?
Things are looking good. Coming up on entry. Vehicle reports entry interface. At this time, it will begin pressurizing the propulsion system to increase the thrust of the system. We'll use that for all the maneuvering in the atmosphere we're about to do. We are standing by for guided start of guided entry. We are beginning to feel the atmosphere as we go in here. The vehicle has just reported via tones that it has started guided entry. At this time, the vehicle is beginning to steer its way to the target. We have seen peak deceleration. It is starting its first bank reversal. It is reporting that we are seeing G's on the order of 11 to 12 Earth G's. Bank reversal 2 is starting. We are now getting telemetry from Odyssey. We should have parachute deploy around Mach 1.7. The parachute is deployed. We are decelerating. The chill has separated. We're on the ground. We're down to 90 meters per second at an altitude of 6.5 kilometers descending. Standing by for backshell separation. We are in powered flight. We're at altitude of 1 kilometer descending. Standing by for sky crane. Sky crane has started.
Eagle Live, you remain strong.
Touchdown confirmed. We're safe on Mars.
our thumbnail.
Oh, it just never gets old. So for my part of the presentation, I thought I'd give you a little bit of the backstory on how this all came about. For my part, it started in 2009. I was interviewing with Dr. Jim Green, who is the head of planetary science at NASA. And it was really my first time to meet Jim. He's also the keynote speaker this afternoon, so I really encourage you to stick around after our presentation to hear more firsthand information. But when I met with Jim, he was talking about the challenge that he was facing, that he had launches coming up to Mars and to Jupiter and to the moon. He had spacecraft on its way to Mercury, circling Saturn, on their way to asteroids and Pluto. And his concern was that no one knew about all these exciting things that were happening, comet encounters, Venus transits. And through that, the rest of the conversation, he was talking about this weird approach of doing something with, a landing on one-ton rover on Mars or something like that. And he was doing something with his hands, and I kind of zoned out by that time. But it really didn't matter because I was already sold. I thought, wow, to be a part of a 2-year endeavor to bring the public along with these extraordinary discoveries and events, I wanted to be a part of that. So fast forward, if I could have the next chart, Wade. It was January 2012, and science at NASA has a new leader. Dr. John Grunsfeld. He was a 5-time astronaut, 4 times to the Hubble Space Telescope, bona fide hero. And he comes back into NASA to lead NASA science. Now, again, January 2012, one of his first all-hands with all of us was his talking about the excitement that he felt at the recent Mars Science Laboratory launch, where we had 15,000 people show up down at the Kennedy Space Center in November, and how more excited he was going to be in August when we landed at Mars. Now, John's background is astrophysicist, so for an astrophysicist to talk about the exciting things at Mars is pretty extraordinary. Fast forward again, T-minus 87 days. I wasn't quite a part of the landing events. There were others in charge at that time, but I get called into Jim Green's office, and he says, John wants a more focused approach to the landing. He has a vision. He wants this landing of Mars Science Laboratory to be for this generation what the Apollo 11 landing was for our generation. And we're not quite yet there. So we need a more focused approach. Once again, I thought, wow, this is the opportunity, again, that we've been working for 2 years for. We had partners that had been with us for these launches, like Lockheed Martin. We had partners like Chris Carberry at Explore Mars, Mars Rocks. We had partners across the world from the Venus Transit. Elaine Lewis had developed a partnership with the folks in India, in Mumbai. We had the UK, we had science centers from around the country, Steve Lee at Denver. We had all of these partnerships, and I thought, we need to mobilize them once again for this historic endeavor. And for the next 3 months, that's exactly what we did. It was a very challenging time, but I think it's really a testimonial to the power of the NASA team. Every single center was engaged, every single visitor center. We had libraries, we had camps. The American Camp Association was a new partnership. And so what you saw was the result from a vision that was set forth in 2009 that was re-established in 2012. And because of the 947 leaders across the world, we were able to bring you the Mars Science Laboratory Curiosity landing like never before. And so I wanted to share with you one of my favorite charts. Next chart, please. Nope, go back to that chart. So when we were going through, we had these teams that had the established relationships. So when we talk about promoting Mars, it's really first raising awareness of what NASA's going to do well in advance for everyone to come along with us. And so the partners that we had, one of them was the Ames Research Laboratory, Research Center, who has the relationship with Google. And I said, you know, it'd be really great if we could have a Google Doodle sometime during the landing. And so they checked into it and said, no, sorry, Kristen, it's not going to happen. The Olympics are going on. And so that doesn't look like it's going to happen. I said, okay, I understand, but thanks for trying. And so sure enough, on August 6th, one of my personal metrics was the fact that if you look at the Google Doodle in the very top portion, there is the Curiosity and the Sky Crane landing. And so thanks to the Ames folks and the Google folks, they pulled it off. The other thing that, from a metric standpoint, what happened on that night, 17 million viewers tuned in through the NASA websites and the NASA assets. We had 127 million page views over the 3 days, 36 million web streams, over 600 events worldwide, where folks reached out to their community, brought the public in to watch the event live. All 50 states were represented, thank you, Sioux Falls, and it was a really exciting time. But we couldn't have done that alone. It was really through that amazing leadership early on and through the partnering throughout that made it happen. So because of that, Mars doesn't belong to one center or one agency or even one country anymore. Mars really belongs to the world, Mars for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to have a great conversation here, but I want you to invite you all to be part of it too. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but if you have questions, you know where the mics are, so please come up and we'll take some other questions too. So let me ask this question first, and this is, I think all of you can comment on this, which is, but I think we'll start with Kristen, but you were also behind the scenes, Marc, so I want to hear your comments on this too. What did Curiosity do differently in terms of marketing, communications, and outreach strategy? One of the things that I think we saw was that we weren't afraid to create this sense of risk, and that we weren't afraid to, with the 7 Minutes of Terror video, explain that, you know, things can go wrong and that's okay to actually talk about risk for a change. So to talk about that a little bit, but anything else that you think we did differently?
Well, I, for one, don't think Mars needs a press agent. It's pretty cool on its own. It's kind of its own rock star. But what happened leading up to the campaign was that there was an awful lot of messaging. And David Weaver, the head of NASA Communications, was really instrumental. We went to him and said, we really need to just simplify all of this. And it needs to be fact-based, and we need to tell it like it is and not sugarcoat it. Mars is hard. We looked at the data, and since 1960, humanity really only had about a 38% success rate at the planet. And once those stats were shown and what we were trying to do with this thing, it was immediately apparent to a lot of us that we needed to just tell it like it was, and then also combine it with the video, with the animation. Because once people saw the stats and they saw the video of what we were attempting, they really got it. And then combine that with the personal touch that JPL did with the 7 Minutes of Terror video was really kind of the recipe for success. There
were a lot of personal touches, though. Even the personification of Curiosity, tweeting in the first person.
Right, yes.
Were decisions that probably contributed to the relationship that people built.
That started
with
really,
MSL.
It actually started, it was allowed by the then Deputy Administrator, Shanna Dale, to have a more proactive approach to communications. She started that in 2006, but I would say that the one that really wrote the book was Veronica MacGregor at JPL, and she did that with the Phoenix Landing, and she personified Phoenix Landing. She's now the news chief there at JPL, and so she's the first person of Curiosity, her and her team. And it's a way of communicating that they found to, like you said, personalize it. I don't think they sleep, though, because they're tweeting 24/7. So, but that's kind of where it started with the Phoenix landing.
Okay. Marc?
What I would add to that was that the landing was kind of a perfect storm in a positive way. You had this dramatic landing that really was, did have a high risk factor. You had a set of instruments that, unlike anything that had really been on Mars before in terms of its size, in terms of its capabilities. You had pictures being taken right at that moment as it was going down, as it was descending. And then you also had a number of just spectacular spokespeople for NASA and JPL. Adam Stelzner, I mean, like total rock star. John Grotzinger is someone who could explain complicated science in a really very compelling way, and there were quite a few others. And so I was there as a journalist writing for both the Washington Post and National Geographic, and it was a terrific story. I mean, it was marvelous what Kristen and others had done to raise the profile of it, but it was also just in and of itself a world-class story.
It was a good story. Emily, what inspired your friends and you to pay attention? Of course, you were already probably interested in space and science already, so you were probably an advocate for it. But was there something different, do you think, about the way that the communication, the message was getting out to young people?
Yeah, so this is one of the first NASA missions that really targeted social media, which is the main platforms that our generation communicates. So you'll notice that this is a much more globalized generation, and that means that we all have access to a lot more news stories, so we know there's a lot more going on. But with more news stories, we're going to have to summarize each article we read a lot faster because you can't go through all the news stories. So the idea of Twitter and Instagram and sending in these photos gives people in my generation these quick updates in a very personalized manner. So having the first person tweets were very, very exciting, and also the very engaging, the video bringing us in to what's going on really caught our attention.
The word that we throw around a lot when we talk about communications and try to figure out how to reach people is engagement these days. You know, you just can't communicate messages anymore. You have to engage people in those messages, and I think that young people expect that now.
And one of the really brilliant touches in terms of doing that were the several selfies that they were able to do using some of the cameras there, where it looked like someone was outside of the screen taking a picture of the rover, and it gave it personality and it gave it real presence.
There we go. We need a budget for selfies. So let's talking about intergenerational approach. One of the words that we use, another fancy word that communications folks use this idea of value proposition. What is the value? And the value of going to Mars, the value of exploring the universe. I think we saw the Apollo generation, if you ask them that question, they are absolutely committed to U.S. leadership, and there's a very, I think, America first centric view of why we need to go to space, and that's a very legitimate reason to want to go to space. And then we see that maybe young people look at it more from a global perspective. So I'd like you all to comment on that, and I'm going to start with Emily. Emily, I mean, how is your generation different than perhaps maybe the Apollo generation in terms of what the Mars generation thinks? Yeah,
so you look at our generation, and we were raised on the tenets of technology and really cool new gadgets. We were raised with films like An Inconvenient Truth, so we have constantly this idea that the world could come to an end and we're ruining our planet. And then there's also the idea that for us, Mars is iconic. It's what we've been hearing about growing up. We weren't around for when the moon was iconic. And for us, Mars is not only bold, but it's achievable. It's something in the realm that we could actually achieve. And yeah, so for us, it's the next logical step. and it's also kind of a contingency plan. So that's what's really exciting to us, is that if we start working on a project now, we would be able to see it to fruition. So we can start the idea of getting engaged in working on a mission to Mars. We can imagine seeing that through to colonization of another planet if for some reason we had to leave our planet. It's, as a colleague said, our next closest lifeboat. So that's kind of how we see it.
Okay.
The themes that strike me as most salient, somewhat different than what Emily was describing, is unlike the moon launches, going to Mars is to some extent about searching for life beyond Earth, which is a huge question and something that just reverberates, I think, through NASA. This Curiosity is not a life detection mission, but it's looking for habitats where life could have developed, and in fact, it has found them. I mean, it is an extraordinary achievement. And so that is a very different thing than Apollo. The second is, you know, it's becoming more and more clear that back in the day, as in 3.5 or 4 billion years ago, Earth and Mars were quite similar. There was water, running water on Mars. There was an atmosphere on Mars. We don't know exactly, you know, or even generally, the contours and the extent of that, but it is no longer implausible to think that the two planets were really quite similar. And then you get into this whole world of, okay, how do you understand planets in terms of time? Maybe there was life 4 billion years ago there. Now there's life here. In any case, it's those two issues, the question of life and the question of our planets being so similar at a certain time, but no longer as so similar.
Well, I thought being Earth Day that we could maybe make that connection a little stronger. You know, one of the things that keeps coming up generationally is that, you know, the younger generation is really here to save our planet. You know, we kind of messed it up and they're going to save it. But what Marc said about the similarities is absolutely true. This is a video that was put together for the Maven launch. Maven is now on its way to Mars. It's an orbiter and it's there to study the atmosphere. And so it will know, perhaps, if what happened there could happen here. Pretty sobering. But it is true that there are very much similarities between our two planets. And a lot of this animation was put together by Michelle Viatti and her wonderful team at JPL. But it really does drive home the point that we do study other planets to learn more about ourselves?
Well, it strikes me too, the art of communication. We've really embraced video, and I think we've embraced social media. And so this is a tough question for you, Marc. You know, what's the future of traditional journalism versus social media and reaching? You know, do we have to? Do we expect that we? Is traditional media going to have to change too? In order to get the message out and to reach people and new readers and to build that.
Well, a reasonable question. I had the good fortune to also write for the National Geographic website.
Yes.
And I'm frequently startled and delighted by how many people come on to that and how many people respond to it. So that's a way of kind of channeling some of the traditional journalism and putting it out in ways that are accessible. But then also I think, and this is perhaps additionally hope, that there is an audience that wants to go very deeply into a subject. That's what I've sought to do, you know, spent a year and a half and brought all these photographs together and all the science together in a very deep dive. It will not probably go as far as some of the social media things that happen on National Geographic,
but the good news is, you know, even a beautifully written, deep look into science in National Geographic, before you had to wait for the letter of the editor to have a comment, and you would turn to that section of a magazine or the paper to see the dialogue. But today, you can get comments directly in real time from the world on an article and have a dialogue about the work, even if it is a longer feature. So to me, it's not about embracing how deep we go or how shallow we go on a topic, but the fact that now we can engage with our readers in a real-time way. It does change things, though, quite a bit.
Definitely so, and I'm not sure, you know, having been at newspapers for a long time, as they gradually have struggled with that, I could certainly assure you that it is a difficulty, but it's one that I think is being dealt with now, and the idea is to just have many platforms. And many platforms, and people can come to them at kind of the place where they want to be.
Right.
Marc is being very humble. His book, Mars Up Close, is really, I think, at the intersection of some of the new media and the traditional media, because what he has woven in, and maybe I'm stealing your thunder.
No, go ahead.
So what he's woven into his book are these markers that you can basically download a free app, Spacecraft 3D, and then depending on where you are in the book, you put the app in front of the marker, and then the spacecraft comes up, and you can learn more, and you can basically help explore Mars through his book and that app. And it's pretty cool.
Very cool.
And so he's really at the forefront of a lot of the intersection of the traditional and the new media.
Not an ad for his book, but
no, I just thought it was super
excellent.
cool.
No, but that's the fact that you can engage readers that way is fantastic. Right. Let's change the subject just for a minute, because this is an important one, which is the value. How do we communicate the value of Mars exploration, robotic versus human? I think that I know, being a board member of Explore Mars, that Explore Mars as an organization is committed to an all-of-the-above strategy. We need both robotics and we need humans. In order to get humans to Mars, robotics has to go first and has to help us get there. But I think there's been a debate over the value proposition between the two, and I'd just like to discuss that first. Is there a different way that we need to talk about human exploration versus robotic exploration, or is it the same dialogue?
Well, I think it's not an either or. You know, in the old days it was. You know, I remember those days of Hubble versus shuttle and all that, and our research has shown that it's, from the general public perspective, there is no debate. It was kind of an internal thing. You know, the public just wants to know more. They want to know it in advance, and they want to be a part of the journey. And I think intuitively folks understand that robots paved the way. We need to collect as much information about any environment, whether it's here on Earth or outside of our planet. And so I think intuitively that it's no more an either or like it kind of was when I was growing up. I think because of some of the selfies and the personification, people do tend to see the personalities of our robots, as well as understanding that when humans get there, they're going to learn so much more. I think Jim Garvin said earlier, you know, a human can walk in one day what Curiosity has taken almost 2 years to traverse, and so it's true.
Emily, has there been do people talk about human exploration differently than they talk about robotic exploration? Is there a difference in people's minds?
Yeah, well, definitely human exploration seems more exciting to my generation, but there's also the idea that these days things seem to be moving faster and faster and faster, and that can maybe push some people to move into human exploration before they're ready. So there have been a couple proposed missions that maybe aren't quite just, there's a general consensus that we're not ready to put humans on Mars, and that robotic exploration would be necessary first. And while that maybe is not engaging, there are ways to make it engaging and to personify it, like you did with Curiosity. So I personally believe that would be the first step. And then you start weaving in human exploration. But it is true that I think our generation will always find human exploration more exciting.
And a new component to the whole discussion is the world of commercial space, where you have you know, the Elon Musks and Dennis Titos and others who talk very with great sincerity, and I think with probably, you know, with follow through, that they want to go to Mars. Musk says he wants to die on Mars, hopefully not in a landing, but rather, you know, and at an old age. And we know Tito is talking about the flyby. And this is a whole new way of thinking, I think, about the human part of exploring Mars. I think ultimately all of these commercial sides will need NASA as well. But you know, hopefully there'll be a productive you know, kind of coming together of the two.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, go ahead. Please introduce yourself too. Just yell.
Hi, I'm also a writer for RealTime and for First Books. And we've been talking a lot about how important it is to have the public be engaged and informed about what's going on with NASA. A lot of people don't actually know that much about what programs there are. And so kind of with that in mind, for those of us who aren't, you know, at companies like Phillips Company or NASA, who are working on a more individual level, do you have any advice about how to kind of bridge that gap between, yes, I'm interested in NASA in the abstract, and I am engaged, I'm following this, like how can we better sort of... Okay, well, I guess I get to do the summary anyway on the microphone. When we're working kind of on a more individual level as advocates for spaceflight, either as professionals or just in our personal lives, do you have any advice from your own experience about how to help bridge that gap between people who are obviously interested in NASA and things that it's doing, and getting them actively engaged and following and invested?
Does anybody want to take that first? How do we get people engaged?
Well, I think that it's really our responsibility at NASA to inform you well in advance of our activities. I know it's very difficult sometimes to meander, but you know, just having enough lead time so that you can prepare or you can do your own events or partner is what has been critical to the success. And so, you know, coming up at the rest of this year, there's a lot of exciting activities going on. We have the Maven will go into orbit around Mars on September 21st. 4 days later, 3 days later, we have the Indian spacecraft MOM, what's not to love about that, on September 24th. We also have a comet sighting spring that's going to pass by close approach to Mars in October. And then we'll have 7 assets worldwide. We'll have 7 assets at Mars when Comet Sighting Springs goes by on October 19th, I believe. Then we have the very exciting, I think the window opens December 5th, of the engineering flight test article on which is a first test flight for humans to Mars. And that's, again, down at the Kennedy Space Center. Cheryl Hurst and her amazing team, and Ashley Edwards, and they're all working very hard. We would like all of you to come down to Kennedy Space Center in December and cover that event. It's really going to be exciting. So I think really it's incumbent upon NASA to inform you of the exciting things coming up well in advance, and then really ask you what we need to do to help your efforts more.
I think I want to say one thing too. There's only so much NASA can do because you're restricted. You're a government agency. You are the ambassadors, and we need to get outside of Washington, and we need to inspire people in Denver and Detroit and San Diego and San Francisco, and I'm not going to name every place, but you know where I'm going with that. Everywhere. Throw a party. Talk about the NASA mission that's cool on Facebook. There are young people like Emily who are starting companies who are doing things at Kickstarter that's raising money for their Mars missions and for other things that they want to do. There are opportunities for engagement at a micro level and also at a fun level. I think that as a nation, I think we need to be very proud of what we're doing in space, both what NASA's doing and what our commercial space industry is doing. And together, I think we are leading the world in space, but I think if we wait for NASA to throw the party, I think that we're going to miss the opportunity. So I'll just say that.
And honestly, I think that's kind of where space exploration is leading, because thank you, Rich, you mentioned the mission that we're working on, and the primary purpose of our mission is to get the world engaged and excited about space exploration. And it's the audiences that aren't the NASA scientists and aren't the people typically reading the lengthy technical journal articles. It's the people that are just like, hey, I'm a space enthusiast, I want to know what's going on. And those are the people that we want to engage. And I think that space is taking a turn for that angle when we're realizing how important it is to get everyone involved.
And just an FYI about how things are working now. Space stories about planets, about what the most recent one about inflation after the Big Bang. They were huge stories around the world in traditional newspapers, on television, online. And it is well known in the business that space stories do really, really well. It kind of baffles me sometimes why there's not more coverage of it, but putting that aside, it is a known fact that there is a huge audience for that.
Yeah, there is. Yes, please.
Speaking to what you were saying a second ago, Robert, about ambassadors, I am a JPL NASA volunteer, solar system ambassador. I'm also Ken Brandt. Most of you already know that already. But I wanted, Kristen, you to speak to the volunteer networks that are out there that you can join as part of and help NASA spread that story without NASA having to spend money to do it.
Right. Thank you very much. So NASA has an amazing brand, if you will, but what is more amazing are the volunteer networks around the country and around the world. We have the Solar System Ambassadors, the Night Sky Network, the Amateur Astronomers Club, we have the Gavert Group, and what these folks are, there's like a person located at a NASA center at JPL that basically handles the volunteer network, and there's criteria that has to be met to be a part of that volunteer network. But I think last year, with all the volunteer networks, there was over 6,200 events that were handled worldwide. It's just an amazing network, and it's all volunteer, except for those, arms and legs that manage the resources. Kay Ferrari at JPL, Anita Soas, they're amazing. And they're the ones that make sure that they get the content, they have access to the subject matter experts, and more importantly, they get the feedback from the community of what's working and what isn't. So thank you for the plug.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Piper Sagrist. I'm a high school senior, and we've talked a lot about engaging people in space and getting them excited, and how curiosity is like the big Apollo event of this generation. what plan does NASA have, or other organizations even like National Geographic, to continue engaging people and get them even more engaged in the future?
Well, as it turns out, National Geographic and NASA have a collaboration going on this summer, the Summer of Space, that is going to highlight a number of articles, books, and events, and it's going to be at NASA, at the NGS headquarters, I think. So there is very much that effort to try to engage in different ways.
What's exciting about some of these partners that already have a well-established set of audiences, especially like with the National Geographics or the Smithsonian, is they're very visually rich. And what's cool about NASA is we have the real imagery, and so putting the two together just makes an awful lot of sense. One of the most popular exhibits we have is the Mars is Art exhibit. Some of you may have seen that at the Dulles Gateway, going from terminal C to D, or no, from the main terminal to C. And so that was a partnership with MWAA, and so that was over 10,000 travelers that saw the Mars as Art exhibit every day. And so there's those kind of things that when you have this cool content, cool imagery, it just makes sense to partner with those that have a broader reach than NASA ever could alone.
Do we have time for one more question? Yes.
My name is Margaret Race, and I work for SETI Institute and NASA's Planetary Protection Office. I, too, am a solar system ambassador from JPL, and I'm a biologist. And I think that all of this is so exciting, especially I got involved with Mars sample return when they started the early planning. And it's a wonderful way to do education and public outreach and show students and everyone how exciting this is and why it's relevant. Let me push you a little further. You talk about engagement, and I want you to think about, what if we find what we're looking for? What if we discover life on Mars, even though it's only microbial? Now it becomes, say, if it's distinct from our DNA, now you've got a second genesis. So think about what that means. How would you engage people? How do you go beyond just the education and outreach at JPL and other places and think about the risk decisions? And what kind of policy, if any, does NASA have about the discovery of extraterrestrial life? And what would that do for human missions?
Is there a black book of what to say and not to say when we discover ET?
Well, I have 2 young kids, and the proposition of them growing up in other than a Earth-centric view of life is extraordinarily exciting.
I think the impact would be on, I didn't mean to take the words out of your mouth there, Marc. I think the impact would be social, cultural, it would span a religious identity, and it would be something that I don't think we would be able to control. I think it would be, you tell the facts and you communicate and you engage. Yes?
In the first book that I wrote, which was about astrobiology, there also is a religious aspect to this, and in fact there was an astrobiology gathering at the Vatican that I went to, and so that's an important part of the whole way of thinking about what if we do find life somewhere. But it is, I believe, it would be one of those Copernican kind of moments when everything changes. It won't change overnight. It's just our understanding of human role in the universe will, over time, become entirely different. We're not going to be the center. We're going to be one of many.
Great. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap up. I apologize because I think we could go on, but I do want to just say one more thing. I want to, first of all, encourage you all to be ambassadors and to communicate and take the message forward, both word of mouth, social media, and in your groups of influence. And I know that during the Academy Awards, I know Ellen DeGeneres got did a selfie and got the most tweets. So I'd like to do a selfie with the 4 of us.
You're not going to do this.
Yeah, come on. We'll get up and do it. Come on. We'll see how well we can do.
Okay.
Come on. Ready?
All right. So
All right, let's see if we can get in there.
All right.
Oh, wait, we have to turn it around.
Emily, no.
All right, let's see. We have to go like this. We all look better like this.
Ready?
All right. I can't.
Okay, we're going to Mars.
How do I?
Going
Wait.
to Mars.
Here, I have to do this.
Okay.
This is just too hard. Okay. Yeah, I'm not very short. I'm taking a video. Hold on. All right, there we go.
Okay.
There we go.
To Mars.
Yeah. Okay. So this will be hashtag H2M, and I want you all to retweet it, and I want you to keep tweeting because we're now trending in Washington, D.C. H2M is one of the top news stories in D.C. today, so keep it up.
Well,
Thank you.
For your efforts.
Thank you very much.